Hello, everyone. Once again, Stone here from the main stage, and I already have two very, very smart gentlemen here with me. We, of course, keep some of the best sessions for the end of the day, so you'll be really, really entertained and educated. But without any further ado, this session is going to be about the rise of global tech entrepreneurship, and what a pleasure to have here with me on stage these two gentlemen, Varga Moayed, Chief Strategy Officer of UiPath, and David Dana, Head of Tech VC Investments at European Investment Fund. Gentlemen, the stage is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. And I think indeed, as you said, typically those sessions at the end of the events are not the most crowded ones, but I'm sure it might be relevant for those here and also the people online. And we're really happy to share this stage with Varga. And I think it's something that maybe as an introduction, I personally joined the IF more than 10 years ago. At that time, we were already the leading LP in terms of volume of investment into venture capital funds across Europe. But again, at that time, 95% of what we were doing was to invest in funds investing mainly in France, Germany, and the UK, basically. Since then, it has evolved a lot. We have diversified strongly our portfolio, both in terms of funds and where they are located, meaning where the investment teams are based, and also something which is very significant is about how the money has been spread by those managers, meaning the ones located in what we call peripheral Europe, which is not the core historical Western European side of the EU, but also funds in Western Europe which have been investing, and I think UiPath is a great example of that. And that's something which is definitely a major evolution of the market in Europe. Because again, France, Germany, there have always been some great companies, good companies, but now UiPath, I recall, maybe it was 1 or 2 years ago, and I think it's maybe still the case, it was mentioned as being the fastest growing company in the world. And that's something which I think a lot of people don't know was initially originated out of Romania.
That's right. I mean, first of all, I'm not Romanian, I moved to Romania, and I know that people in Romania, in this country, would not enjoy being called peripheral. They refer to themselves as the emerging Europe. So yes, indeed, I think the rise of global tech entrepreneurship is a phenomenon that has a very strong fundamental trends, and we are just an example of these fundamental trends that has allowed a company like UiPath to emerge in 2013. For instance, according to Deal Room, the latest report in 2010, I think they say there were only 22 locations in the world that had produced unicorns, and the latest number is 170 locations. Obviously, some of these locations are also other locations in the US because it's not only Silicon Valley, but I can also tell you that many locations are more and more outside of the US. So we are part or the result of a bigger trend, and there are several fundamental reasons for it.
Yeah, and specifically coming to this question of the reasons for such a development of those geographies which were historically underserved in terms of capital available for startups. One of the statements we make based on our findings, walking around in many of those countries and discussing with a lot of people, being stakeholders of the innovation ecosystem in Europe, is that there's a lot of highly skilled people from a technical standpoint, but until very recently, those people used to move quickly abroad, meaning either to Western Europe or to the US, because they had very few views of what they could be doing by remaining local. But something which may have helped also, but this is even more recent, is the situation of the COVID and the pandemic, where we, starting with us, the EIF, we are a European institution, we were all scared that our IT system will not support having from one day to the other more than 500 people going fully online. It worked. We were super happy with that. It was not the easiest experience we had, but it worked. And this is one very tiny example of the fact that everyone now has to be thinking about global and digitalization. So again, the point I want to make here is that there has always been a lot of opportunities, but maybe they are becoming also more visible now in this context where you don't need anymore to be moving immediately once you have something which appears as being potentially attractive for an investor. You don't have immediately to move away, to move abroad and relocate the company, your family and everything.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. You know, there was a saying in the Silicon Valley where they said the VC, they will only invest to company that was a bicycle right away. And the reason they were saying they were only investing in a company that was a bicycle right away was because, especially in VC funding in startup, a lot of the investment criteria is, do I know this person? Do I know the reputation of this person? Can I actually trust this person? And it was a small ecosystem where they can check out somebody very quickly. Now, interestingly enough, in the last couple of decades, there are around the world what I call network of trust organizations that have been built, such as Techstar, such as Y Combinator, such as Endeavor, which I'm part of, which is NGOs that have actually, or YPO, which are basically organizations that have implemented themselves all over the world, where they are creating a network of people that they are coaching, etc. So this network of trust is being created, and it allows now with the pandemic for a VC based on the West Coast or a VC based in Luxembourg or wherever to actually trust the person on the other side of Zoom because they know, oh, he is a Kaufman Fellow or he is part of Endeavor. So these are stamps of trust that have been extended and institutionalized beyond the bicycle ride.
And would you say that some things that maybe you have perceived at the level of an operational company, contrary to what can be done by people like us, would you see a different way also people outside of Europe are looking at those type of companies? Because we know that UiPath, for instance, raised its growth capital from Google, notably. Is that something that would not have happened 10 years ago? What do you think would be the triggering point making that type of super known and experienced investor considering an investment opportunity out of Romania? Again, despite what we just said, it was still not the most evident and obvious thing to do.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, when Capital G, Google, came to our cap table, at the time, there was already in our cap table actually one of the pioneering VC companies, American, Accel Ventures, who had opened a European office. So, so again, you see there was a bridge towards, but things have really accelerated. If you look now, people such as Vision Fund, which was not American, has started investing a lot outside of US with some good success in their case, particularly in Asia. But you have others such as Tiger Capital, Sequoia, Excel, who have shown to the other investors that there are really some gems to be found outside of the US. And also when they invest, they already see, usually, these are still not seed investors, they're trying to be Series A and most often Series B, they already see some traction. And the thing that has changed, particularly for Eastern Europe, and I would say in Europe in general, is that finally we do have serious seed investors in this part of the world, and actually in other part of the world as well. People like Seedcamp, again, they have been the pioneers in Europe for that, and they were one of our early investors or early bird, etc. So the fact that seed investment, serious seed investment, is starting, it helps because by the time then it gets to these guys, which have also, based on some nice examples, have seen that they can be companies with a good track record from income other places, they're more willing to invest.
Indeed, that's very true. And I think an additional element we have noticed over time is that there's a strong effect also from the diaspora, meaning that we see a lot of people who have been living and experiencing being quite successful as entrepreneurs or investors in the US, but originally from various countries in Europe, and now coming back and launching their own investment firm in Europe also to help, first of all, bringing some kind of spillovers for the country, for the national country, and to share their experience with younger entrepreneurs. That's something notably we have experienced in Greece, which is maybe not the first country you would think about in terms of venture capital, but we have been deploying there a specific the program with the support of the Greek government, and we have identified a number of players that we have backed, and I think 80% of those players were launched by people who have been highly successful in the US, and now they earned enough to live well, and now they were back to Greece to support the local ecosystem to develop and to foster and reach a certain level of development. And now we see the first successes of this approach, with a number of companies raising hundreds of millions, and even the first exits for quite I would say significant valuations. So maybe that's something that is part of the I think all in all, that's also one of the benefits of the European Union, because we, AIF, but not only us, have been providing capital to those underserved markets to help them catching up. So they're not yet there, but there's much more than whatever was available on the market. So this is also, I think, another aspect that has to be taken into consideration, which is the fact that there are some nationals having gained a lot of experience outside of their home country and now coming back to help those geographies to develop. Is that something you've seen also maybe more at an operational level within UiPath? Now the company is, has a lot of operations outside of Europe, but maybe in the early years of UiPath, when it was still quite local in terms at least of staffing, did you see a lot of people joining the company from other countries outside Europe?
Frankly, no. Because Romania, I mean, with the exception perhaps of Bitdefender before us, we were really the first company in Romania that had ambitions to scale outside of Romania and the world. So there were not yet this, unlike our Greece friends, this diaspora of Romanian with experience and with such an attachment back to the home country. But what we do see, however, and I do confirm, is that on the other hand, our R&D center in Bellevue in the US, we see a lot of very talented Romanian expat in the US that leave their jobs and come to us just because we're Romanian. Obviously because we're successful Romanian, but there is this element, if I am going to work for a tech company, actually the fact that I'm working for myself being Romanian, that I'm working for Romanian is a plus. So that has helped us in the R&D talent in our case specifically. And the diaspora actually has two roles. Its role is not, they're as valuable if they actually stay in the US. Because most companies, if you want to succeed on the global stage in technology, you must succeed in the US. So actually having bridges to the American market, it is something that is actually essential. And I think two nations have proved that in a spectacular way. I'm talking about Israel, obviously, as well as India, where they have very good bridges into the IT ecosystem of North America.
Definitely, and that's something we all notice. And the link with the US is obvious because at the end, in terms of venture capital investment, the exit market remains in the US. So as long as it will be the case, this bridge with the US will be natural and very welcome. And even us as a political institution, that's not something we are trying to block at all because we don't want to block any kind of commercial expansion. Maybe something, a question I had actually for you. Do you think that this example of a successful company coming out of Romania again is seen as the example to follow by the new generation of entrepreneurs? Do you see many people trying to get in touch with your alumni or whatever in any way to create a link with you, generally speaking, UiPath, to get advice and to hopefully follow you?
Yes, very much so. So much so that actually that's what I'm just coming out of the stage of the UiPath Automation Awards. We've had naturally people come to us first from Romania and then in extended fashion from Eastern Europe and even from Europe, asking us what's your secret sauce, how did you do it, etc. And people were being asked on a personal level. We say, let us institutionalize that, and we created the UiPath Automation Award. But I can also see it in an anecdotal fashion. I have met and I'm meeting a lot of startups and entrepreneurs that say, you made us believe that it can be done. So in addition to eventually there will be, I would say, UiPath alumni, a bunch of people with some experience and some money to help the next generation entrepreneurs or maybe start the next companies. We also, the example alone, it is like, when you have, we have the same phenomena with tennis in Romania. When Simona Halep became the #1 women tennis player, there are a lot of little girls who picked up and started playing tennis, and so there is this emulation. One of the things that that I often say to the people in Eastern Europe is dare to dream big, and this again I go back, there are fundamental trend and reasons why now you can dream big, perhaps much more than you could 10-15 years ago. Because you can have a product like go-to-market thanks to cloud infrastructure. You can actually have seed investment in your own country. You can actually get, large corporations are willing to buy from startup, which they were not 10-15 years ago. So there are many reasons why the stars are aligned for the rise of global tech entrepreneurship that may have not been the case 10 years ago. Now, the only thing that you need is to actually dare to think and dream big.
Indeed, and that relates to my next question, which is we've seen it with the successes of Skype a number of years ago, or other kind of big European companies, the so-called mafia, I would say, which are all those top managers of those big companies, which being quite successful, now are also launching their own VC branch again, but not having been working abroad, but willing to do something and hopefully to source and identify the next big success. Is that something which is in a way even mentioned and discussed within UiPath or within the top management, a way to help the ecosystem further or to launch some initiatives?
I think for the moment, our institutional initiative is the Automation Awards. The Automation Award allows us every year to give an award. It's for CEE in Turkey. So we're concentrating on this region. So we put the spotlight on a startup, on a scale-up. We actually give the startup, in addition to the award, 50,000 euros in cash. We provide them mentorship. We provide them our software for free if it's useful to them. For the scale-ups, we actually commit to presenting them to 4 or 5 very large clients of UiPath. So I think what people need at this point is actually this, putting the spotlight on them and providing them mentorship. There are many people out there that money, I'm going to dare say, it's no longer the issue. There is plenty of money in general in VC, and there is enough money at the seed level now in the region to allow these companies to reach the next phase. So this is what UiPath is doing. Now, some UiPath on an individual basis can be deciding to invest if they wish to do so, but it is not our purpose for now to turn into a VC.
Sure. And so what is the next step for UiPath, if I may ask, now that you are listed, being very few numbers of tech accounts, already generating very nice returns for your early investors and even the later ones. What is the objective now as a company in terms of development?
Well, actually, it's interesting that you say now as if we had achieved something, because we actually consider that we have achieved still very little. It is really the first inning of the automation market. We believe that we are part of something that is a very fundamental trend in the enterprise software market. Enterprise have been digitizing, even though the word has become very trendy lately, but companies have been deploying information service systems for decades. But they have digitized according to function and with full stack applications. It means, they digitize the back office function with SAP, front office with CRM, then, HR systems and supply chain, then every sub function today, because of thanks to SaaS, have their own full stack application. But what happens is that more and more, there is business innovation that requires you to digitize according to a workflow. And then you are struggling as a business person, you go to your IT and you say, okay, can you connect this thing? This has come back in a year. By the time they build something for you, the business requirements have changed. We all know that story. And comes along the ability to automate workflows according to user interface with a mixture of API, make this development easier. So it's part of a bigger trend also known as low code, no code. So we are really at the beginning of this market that we believe it's a 65 billion plus annual market. And, so there's still a long way to go as we intend to dominate this new segment of enterprise software.
Good to know. And when I say no, this is because as being one of the main investors in most of your initial seed investors, we are very happy to see some liquidity back as well. So not on that we're only focusing on that, but it's always good news because, as we mentioned, that there are a lot of unicorns in Europe. I think in our portfolio of EIF only, we have 133 different unicorns across Europe. So that's quite a lot, but the limitation we see still is that most of this is paper value. So getting cash back sometimes is always helpful. So no, I think that's really interesting because, again, there are other geographies which develop well, but in your case, it's really a major success so far, and we all hope it will continue. Which country do you see in particular, if any, in the region or even at a broader scale when it comes to Europe, generally speaking, where you have the feeling, based on what you see, that there could be the next maybe not the next UiPath, but next big success as UiPath?
I'm just going to take a joker on that question. I'm not smart enough to be able to answer that question. There's so many people who are doing extraordinary things across Europe. I think I'm very encouraged by actually the level of activity that has increased dramatically in the last 4 to 5 years. I mean, just you look by numbers, I mean, we all know the big threes in terms of statistic share amount is UK, Germany, and France. But you can always have a black swan like us from any location. That's the beauty of the open world we live in today.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect example of that. So I don't know if there's supposed to be some time for potential questions, if any, because I think now we have reached... no? No questions. So maybe if you have some kind of conclusion remark for...
well, I mean, as I said, my main thing is like the stars are lined up for for tech entrepreneurship to rise from anywhere. Seed fund is available. You can actually reach, if you have a product-led strategy, which is basically you put your product out there, you have the kind of product you put out there where people can download a freemium version, you can actually scale very quickly without having to build in the beginning a go-to-market, so that allows you to scale fast to see if your product has traction. You can today, attract talent. Talent comes to startup much sooner than they used 10, 15 years ago because of the successes of other startups. So the only barrier to scaling, if I may say, is the mindset. Be bold and be humble, which are the two main values of UiPath. Because if you can master these two values simultaneously, humble enough to know that you don't know, you're constantly learning from your clients and others, and bold enough to believe that you can actually, quote unquote, conquer the world from wherever you come.
Thank you very much. And this topic of mindset was already mentioned today in various occasions, and that was really something which is making a difference, definitely. And thanks for that.
Thank you.
One question.
So my question is, if we go back to, I don't know when you joined the company, but if we go back to the early days of the company, and you have to name 3 major things or 3 major trends that happen in the company that were prerequisites for the further global success of the company, what would be the 3 things that made a difference for UiPath?
Well, I think the first and most important, that continue to be the most important, the personality of our founder. Exceptional companies are built by exceptional founders. Daniel Dinesh is an exceptional founder in the sense that he embodies these 2 cultural trait mindset that I mentioned to you. He's humble and he's bold, and he's always want more, and he's always learning constantly. So we had an amazing founder. We're blessed to still have one. Obviously, I'm a chief strategy officer. We had some astute strategic move. One of them is we went with a product-led strategy where our competitors did not. So we actually put our products out for free, which was downloaded in all over the world, which gave us an idea of where to go and open offices. And third is we were crazy enough to do blitz scaling, again, where some of our competitors have a more measured approach to growth. Blue Prism, just to name them, we're still consolidating Europe, where we had already gone gung-ho in America and opened in 18 months 30 or so offices around the world. So,
thank you very much.